is where we dive into the business of veterinary medicine. So each week, maybe we had a little break, but each week we try to explore the strategies, insights, and stories that help practice owners, managers, and teams run a thriving, efficient, and profitable practice without losing sight of the pets and the people they care for. So whether you're looking for practical tips, expert advice, a fresh perspective on veterinary business, you have come to the right place. I am always happy to talk to Bill Butler. He is my go-to guy for veterinary insurance questions. He's probably lots of people's go-to guy, but he's my guy. Bill, thank you for being here today. If you want to give a little bit of background on you before we jump into all of the, groundbreaking questions.
Sure. Quick background on me. 20 plus years in the insurance industry, a family-run agency that was a generalist until 2017. And then we dove into specializing in veterinary practice. So started off really strong here in Minnesota, very passionate here with what we do. I serve on some boards, part of our state veterinary foundation, giving scholarships to veterinary students here in Minnesota, the vice president of that foundation. We just had our vet gala last Friday. So to the community in the veterinary and animal health space, travel around, do educational seminars and sessions to VBMAs because trying to educate the next generation of veterinarians on how to be good business owners. And I think there's a lot of groundswell and passion for that currently, which wasn't, I don't think, the case when I started. So I'm just excited to see where the industry is going and networking with great business professionals like the team at Granite Peak and my other vet partners, friends. And so that's kind of what we do, just helping veterinarians navigate the confusing, complex world of insurance. We think it's simple, but we deal with it every day, just like you guys deal with taxes, and like, oh, this makes sense to us. Why doesn't it work for you? But they're just focused on, they have so much on their plate. And so that's kind of what we work on.
What made you hone into vet med?
So we were in some other niches before. We had tried daycares as a niche, but my wife and I don't have any children, and I'm a man. And even though there's a lot of women in the vet industry, and that's, I think, where the industry's going, that's especially true in the childcare space. So we did that for a couple of years and that didn't pan out. Then I tried chiropractors. I was in the chiropractic space for a couple of years. That really didn't pan out either. And we insured one veterinarian, and they're really great people to work with. And I think they have some challenges as entrepreneurs and business owners. It's not what they go to school for. And so we saw a real opportunity to assist them with something that, again, we see as simple and, reduce the stress of insurance for them in the process of either, running their practice or starting their practice. And so really honed in on how to streamline the process, make it simple for them to buy insurance products and services to protect everything they're working so hard for as veterinarians, investing so much of their time in. And so, that was, obviously there's a revenue driver, a cost driver for us. Like, it makes sense to work with veterinarians versus some other industries. There's more money in other industries, but again, veterinarians are really great people to work with. They're just good business professional, or not. They're good business professionals, but they're great. Wait a second. They're great business professionals, but they're even better people. And so, getting to spend time with people you want to spend time with as clients, I think is something that we really enjoy as well.
And I love that because they do need all the help they can get, right? You don't know what you don't know. And you come out of vet school and you can spay a cat, but like managing liabilities is another thing. So something that we have run into, unfortunately, a couple of times lately, is employer liability insurance. What is that?
Yeah. So to clarify that really simply, because I just had a lunch meeting with one of our clients yesterday, and they said, we have employer's liability insurance. I said, employer's liability insurance is part of your workers' compensation policy. Employment practice liability insurance is that HR-driven, employee-driven lawsuit. So think wage and hour, sexual harassment, wrongful termination, failure to promote or employ. You hired me to be a DVM and I'm cleaning kennels. Like, you sold me a bill of goods. Contract disputes, anything related to any sort of HR issue in the practice is going to be covered under that employment practice liability insurance. It's sometimes called EPL or EPLI, or if you're super nerdy in the insurance world, EPLI, EPLI, but said in a word. It's all the same thing. It's that employee-driven lawsuit. And the thing to keep in mind with these employee-driven lawsuits, it's actual or alleged. So even, and that's unfortunately where a lot of this lies, is the alleged portion of employment practice liability. And so it's protecting the practice employees, owners, officers of the practice, partners from those actual or alleged employee-driven lawsuits.
Does it feel like it's increasing or is it actually increasing these claims?
In the insurance world, we call it social inflation. There's just more lawsuits out there. You can't see a billboard watching YouTube video, like a Morgan and Morgan, or all these attorneys out there saying we've gotten we've collected 3 billion in claims. Like that's $3 billion in insurance money. Like that's not coming out of people's pockets. That's coming out of insurance policies. And so we're seeing premiums increase in just general liability overall, professional liability. This qualifies as a professional liability policy. But after post-COVID, we're seeing an uptick in people saying, I like being at home a lot during that time. And if I can get some money and be at home, also, I think there's just more claims happening, especially in the vet med industry, veterinary medicine professional organizations like a medical professional. There's a higher likelihood of these types of claims being filed anyway. So it's already a harder profession, high employee turnover. You think about a vet practice with higher employee turnover. Those are incidents that are more likely to have an employment, hiring and firing is a high likelihood of these claims happening. And so you hire and fire a lot of people, and all of a sudden, you're opening yourself up to more chance of this happening versus somebody who's, your team's working for you for 10 years, like not a lot of chance for a claim there.
Is this something that most people already have? Is it like baked in, or is this one of those like options that people opt out of because they don't need it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Megan. And so we work together, we partner with a lot of clients, and when they're startups, the bank does not require this insurance. So veterinarians are looking at this as a startup saying, well, is the bank requiring this? I got a tight budget. No, I don't want it. Don't need it. We're all family here.
Great.
I've heard
We're all
that a few times. Like, no, we're all family. We're all friends. Like, I don't know. I know some families that are horrifically dysfunctional, and like, I'm never talking to Uncle Steve again. Like, you might have that employee working at your practice. And so because it's not a required, your landlord's never going to ask for this. The bank's never going to ask for this. It really does come down to getting some advice from an insurance professional saying, hey, this is really important coverage for you, explaining what this actually covers. And then, looking at the coverage afforded, because you can buy $50,000 of coverage or you can buy $1 million of coverage. And the delta between those two, the difference between the cost between $50,000 of coverage and $1 million of coverage is like $2,000 a year. And so when we talked with our practices about insurance costs, generally, roughly, insurance costs are about 1% of your total gross revenue. So if you're a $1 million revenue practice, you're going to pay about $10,000 for business insurance, workers' compensation, insuring all your practice equipment, commercial auto, cyber, and other coverage that we maybe chat about, not required by the bank, but highly important, employment practice liability insurance. So all those property casualty policies, not health, not disability, but just the policies to run the practice, you're going to spend about 1% of your gross revenue. So if you're $2 million in revenue, you're going to spend about $20,000, $3 million in revenue, $30,000. It's going to fluctuate based on payroll. So if you're paying more payroll, your work comp premium is going to be higher. But this employment practice policy is going to cost somewhere between $900 and $750 a year for, one dog practice with, 3 to 5 employees, up to, 3 to 5,000, depending on, if you've got a team of 30 with, 3 or 4 DVMs. So, but more employees creates more exposure, which is why the premiums are more expensive. And so again, because this isn't required by the bank, veterinarians look at startup costs with getting, he's shelled out $500,000 to build out a space, or $2 million to build a building, or $3 million to acquire a practice. And so they're looking at those costs thinking, well, do I really need this $3,000 policy when I'm already spending, X? And so it really is kind of that decision that they have. And is it worth the expense? And I would say, is the insurance professional in the room saying yes, based on our most recent experience. We were just chatting before hopping on about a veterinarian who, we talked to, we collaborated on, and they said, yeah, I don't really need that. And then all of a sudden they've got $100,000 claim sitting in front of them.
And so when you're seeing these claims come through, because they are coming through, right? Like what dollar amount are people paying out that aren't having insurance?
Yeah, insurance or no insurance. And I just pulled these numbers for 2024 because this is a part of the presentation I present to, associations and VBMAs. And I talk about chapter 6 in my book, Protecting Veterinary Practice. EPLI average claim is between 40 and 80,000 to settle, to make it go away. And the reason for that is you're going to pay roughly a year's salary plus some attorney's fees. So you've got that technician working for you, CVT, practice manager, licensed technician. They're making $45,000 to $60,000 a year. The settlement is this person isn't working for you anymore for whatever reason, actual or alleged. They're not working for you anymore, or they're working for you and now they don't feel they can, and they're gone. They've been gone for 2 months, and all of a sudden this kind of like zombie claim comes out of nowhere that you get served with a demand letter saying, hey, stuff didn't go well while I was working there. I want $300,000.
That's a gut punch. I mean, that's a lot. That's life-changing.
And that's real money. I mean, that's like 300 grand. Where is that coming from? And through a negotiated settlement with the attorney, your insurance company, or your attorney, if you don't have insurance, is going to be, well, we'll take a year's salary plus our attorney's fees of 30 grand. So you're going to pay 80 grand to make that go away. If it goes to court and there's a jury involved and a settlement through litigation where you actually go to court versus a settlement before going to court, those are upwards of $200,000 because the jury looks at the business owner as the big bad wolf with deep pockets versus this poor employee, regardless of circumstance, actual or alleged. And they most often side, which is why there's so many settlements, is the juries most often side with the employee and the awards are much higher. It's in the insurance companies and the employer's best interest to say, yeah, here's 80 grand to make this go away versus go to court and fight it. But if you lose, you're going to pay 2 or 3 times more.
What do you do with that? How do we avoid that? So
you buy insurance. I mean, you spend $2,000 or $3,000 a year for the peace of mind to buy adequate insurance. And there's 2 ways to buy this. There's one through your existing insurance policy. It's called a business owner's policy. We call it a BOP. And so the majority of veterinarians in the United States have a BOP. You can endorse employment practice liability policy insurance onto your BOP. It's okay. You can get 50 to 150, sometimes $250,000 of coverage. Doesn't come with all the bells and whistles that a standalone individual policy for this will have. Premium's a little bit less, but again, you don't get the bells and whistles. But like on a standalone professional liability policy, you buy $500,000 or $1 million of coverage. Like they give you an hour of free legal advice every year. So like if you've got a problem employee that you're going to let go on Friday or Monday this week, you can call this helpline and say, hey, I've got a problem employee. How do I handle the termination? And they will tell you in like very plain English how to handle this to prevent it from becoming a claim, to not make it worse. I mean, these circumstances are bad. And so, it's one of the hardest things you have to do as a business owner is let an employee go, even if it's the right decision. It's still very hard. But like free legal advice versus having to pay an attorney, because the insurance company would love to not have to pay a claim. So they want to help you not get to a claim.
So what level, if I'm, 1 doctor, 2 doctor practice, what level should I aim for?
$250,000.
That covers my braces?
Because if you go to court, that's what's going to cost you, right? And, when we have this conversation with our practices, with our practice owners and practice managers, they say, well, look, if I was firing you and I would go to court and I lose, I get nothing. But if I settle, I'm going to get $80,000. $250,000 in coverage should be adequate for a startup. Like that's kind of like the bare minimum you want to have. 100,000, 250,000. That's the bare minimum. 50 grand. You're not even covering a year's salary and expenses. And when I say expenses, attorney's fees. So you're not going to cover your salary and attorney's fees. So 50,000 really is inadequate. 100, we have some practices who are like, I'll just take something. So we'll put 100,000 on a startup policy just so they have some level of protection. But we're circling back with them saying, all right, now you have 5, 6 employees. You've been in operation for a couple of years. It's time to review this coverage. But if you're an established practice, 10 plus employees, 500,000 or $1 million policy. And the difference between those two, again, is like buying a 500,000 versus $1 million is like $1,000 a year versus a $500,000 of coverage. And if you have a really bad claim, you're dead to rights wrong. You pointed somebody out, Megan, you're the worst CVPM we've ever had, who's ever worked at, and I call you out during team meetings and I make your life a living hell at the practice. You've got a case against me. Like, jury could come after you. You could say, no, I don't want to settle. I'm going to court. Lose or win, I'm going to court. Jury could say, yeah, here's $400,000. You ruined this woman's life. Like, that's reality.
What are some real, okay, I know you've seen them and not to divulge information, but like give us some real, what people are suing for.
Pregnant employees being terminated or not rehired. The case that we currently kind of went through was a practice had purchased another one. And so through the acquisition of the practice, you rehire all the new employees or all the employees that were there. So they're not automatically employed. You have to go through a hiring process. And there was a female employee who was pregnant, did not get rehired, claimed discrimination, and sued the seller, sued the buyer, DVM, like sued everyone because, cast a wide net. It doesn't cost anything to sue anyone on speculation because the attorney suing on behalf of the terminated employee, they're doing it on speculation. They're doing it on the chance that they might get paid out. So they'll say, yeah, we'll help you out because they're going to get a third of the settlement. And so they do it on speculation. And so that wound up, without getting into a lot of details on it, it wound up getting dismissed. The terminated employee withdrew the claim because they had no standing at all. And the insurance company for our clients, the practice basically said, yeah, we'll give you $1,500 was the insurance company, because they were so confident that this was bogus that they said, yeah, we'll give you $1,500 for your time. And, through, kind of the process. So we've seen 2 terminated female pregnant employees sue practice owners. And, one was completely bogus because it was, I'm not bringing you on because they were overstaffed. They kept the prior owner on. So they were it was a DVM who was pregnant. And I'm bringing the former owner on. So it was a 2-vet practice. It's going to be a 2-vet practice, the owner and the old owner, like that's who stayed. And so, you look at these circumstances, like that seems pretty benign, but then all of a sudden, like, boom, somebody shows up at your door, you get a letter in the mail saying, hey, I was making $150K a year, now I'm not, and I blame you.
Right out the gate, right?
I want $150K.
Congratulations. Ownership, yeah.
And so, really it's about hiring process. It's about having good team members on board. It's about addressing problem issues. It's about having a good employee handbook and following the employee handbook. It's about having good HR policies and procedures in place. It's about not causing a lot of problems when you terminate an employee. It's about having, most employees are at will employment states. Like, I can fire anybody for any reason at Butler Vet Insurance. But if it comes back on me, what was the reason for that? Do I have some defensible cause for that? Do I have a documented file? And then not saying stuff that will get you in trouble when you terminate someone.
Oh, the training on that. Yeah, we all need.
And so, so there's some HR stuff, and there are lots of really great practice consultants out there in the vet. I'm not an HR consultant, but I just know from personal experience and claims that having a really solid hiring process in place, because like I talk about it during my presentations, Megan, it's red flags, right? Like if your spidey senses are like, well, we can coach them into being a good kennel attendant. No, you probably can't. Right. And so, it's team interviews. Like, I see something as a man that if you and I sat in an interview together, a team interview, you're going to hear things differently as a woman than I would hear as a man. That's just part of our upbringing and who we are and culture. And so having the opposite sex in an interview is really important because we're going to hear things differently. my wife and I just celebrated 24 years of marriage. We go places and she's like, "Ah, did you hear what he said?" And I was like, "Who?" And she'll say, "Steve." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, he said this." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what's the problem?" And she's like, "Ah, that was terrible." And so we hear things through our own filter. And so when you're going through the hiring process, you really want to make sure that you're bringing a good team member on board to start, because almost exclusively when you get to the termination point is, yeah, we never should have hired them in the first place. Well, what's the process that you have in place to not hire the next bad hire in the first place? Because we all know the cost of a bad hire. And I think, unfortunately, in the vet industry, they're so desperate for help, any help, that they're willing to compromise standards to bring on a team member that winds up being a problem. And then that problem festers and it's bad for
Rolled
the
in
team.
there.
And I'm
Yeah,
sure,
those warm bodies.
yeah. And so, that's where you open yourself up to having to use these types of policies, or, if you don't have it, using your own
No, I don't want
money.
to do that.
No,
Okay.
we don't want to
This
do that.
makes my tummy hurt. So let's change the subject to something else that I don't want to talk about. Cybersecurity, because I don't understand it, and that I don't know. We had at our our server got some sort of like naughty housewives virus one time. Like I don't even know what to do with this. So how does
Mhm.
how does cybersecurity insurance work?
Yeah. So unfortunately, this is probably not going to help your tummy
Okay.
feel any better, Megan, because when I go to an insurance CE talk on cybersecurity, I want to sell my insurance agency and dig holes for a living, because there's probably less chance of something bad happening there. Again, it's one of those coverages not required by the bank. So it's purchased less than employment practice liability insurance, because I think veterinarians think, well, I'm more likely to get sued by an employee than I am to have some sort of cyber incident. Unfortunately, it's probably like a 50-50 coin flip, really. Cyber insurance is what helps respond after a claim. So you want to have all the great technology, IT stuff to prevent it from happening. But over 80% of cyber incidents are caused by human error. It's somebody clicked a link, somebody responded to an email, somebody opened a file, went to a website, and then you got malware. And unfortunately, in a modern vet practice, so much is connected to the internet, phones, lab equipment, your x-ray machine for diagnostic purposes could be connected to Wi-Fi. Printers are connected to Wi-Fi. All of that can get malware on it. And so if one piece of equipment in your practice has malware on it, the odds of everything in your practice having malware on it is really high, and it's very, very hard to get off. And so it's like when you get gas in your hands, like no matter how many times you wash your hands,
I'm
it
thinking of
smells like
glitter, right? Glitter
gasoline.
gets everywhere.
Yeah, glitter.
Trying to put a sparkle on this.
It's that child. Yes. No, my wife Shannon worked at a giftware company, and they all called it glitter lung. Like they all had glitter lung because they worked at this giftware company. And so like there's so much glitter everywhere. It's like that. It's super hard to clean. And so you're almost better throwing everything away and starting over with brand new
Oh,
hardware, getting all new computers and all new phones and all new equipment, because the IT guy is going to come in and scrub the phones and the desktops and everything else. But like, what about the IDEX machine that has malware on it? As soon as you plug in all the new computers that are connected to the internet, that just spreads to all the new equipment you just bought from your lab equipment. So the cyber insurance provides coverage and response after the breach occurs. It will provide forensics, because you got to understand, where did the breach come from? How did they get in? Sometimes they've been there for 6 months laying in wait. Sometimes they put a ransomware on where they're laying in wait for 6 months, just watching your bank accounts come. Like they're just laying there like an alligator in the swamp with their little eyes peeking out of the water. And then all of a sudden, they say, "Oh, you have the most money in your bank account the middle of the month during June, July, and August. So we're going to hit you and close your practice down July 15th. You show up and everything's blue and it says, pay us $52,000 in Bitcoin or we're going to delete everything."
well,
Now, most practices now are on the
right.
cloud, right? So you think, okay, well, I can just, big deal. You're going to wipe my data, but you're shut down. Your x-ray doesn't work. Your lab equipment doesn't work. Your phones don't work because they're on VoIP. All these things don't work because we're in this connected universe. So you think, okay, well, how long can I wait? And with a cyber incident, it provides these things. It can buy new hardware. It can provide all these response things to help you get back on your feet, not to stop it from happening, but to get back on your feet. And because like just what to do, right? Like you're sitting there thinking probably like, if we got breached today, what would we do? Well, you call someone who has a lot of experience with this, which is, these cyber technology experts at cyber insurance companies, because they deal with this all the
Oh,
time.
this is gross. Is it worse if if you're cloud-based versus server? Doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
They'll get you no matter.
Because if they shut you, the server based, they can delete all your data. I mean, that's the problem with server based is, if you, well, we do a backup once a week. Well, okay, we just lost a week's worth
Yeah.
of x-rays. And so, that's it. It's varying levels of, it's like, which layer of hell do you want to be on? The fifth layer or the seventh layer? I don't want to be on any layers of hell. So, how quickly can you get back on your feet? Because ultimately what happens with these cyber breach, right? The cyber breach is the first domino to fall ultimately in, a practice or a business going out of business. So you say, oh, well, we went out of business 6 months after the cyber breach. The cyber breach was that first domino that fell. We were shut down for 3 weeks, and then we lost clients and patients and they didn't come back. And then, we had some team members because we weren't working that we had to furlough because they're not getting paid. And then, so it's like, what was the starting point of this? It was the cyber breach. We lost 4 team members because they went to go work somewhere else because they were able to get a job. And, our reputation with some of our clients because it was a credit
I
card
think about that, all the
issue and their
credit cards
credit
that
card.
people store.
Yep. So storage of credit cards. And that's another biggie that, I talk about with veterinarians like, I don't need cyber stuff because I'm only dealing with dogs. Is like, do you process credit cards? What happens if your credit card processor gets breached? Now you have to do notification of all of your clients. Hey, our credit card processor got breached. So it's called PCI, a payment card protection. And then there's fines against the state. There's duties and notification based on the state you're in. If you have a breach, that's considered a breach. You have to notify and provide, if you've had Experian, Home Depot, Target, any of these big companies that say, we're going to do credit monitoring for a year for you and notification, it's like $250 per person. So if you have 1,000 clients, you're talking about $250,000 just to do notification and credit monitoring for your clients that got wrapped up in this. And veterinarians have lower exposure in that than, my business, because we have a lot more data, birth dates, addresses, phone numbers, driver's license numbers, social security numbers. But, we don't store credit card information. But if you're a practice that keeps credit cards on file for like ongoing
We're out there. I know you're
services,
listening right
you
now.
you absolutely have to. It's not a must. You have to have cyber insurance because you have the same exposure that a different professional has. You say, well, we just manage patient records, but if you're keeping that credit card data on file, you have to have cyber insurance. Buy $1 million.
Can we have a
Again,
silver lining?
$3,000 to $5,000 a year to cover your practice. Like, it's not cost per, some vets look at that, $5,000 for this policy. Yeah. You know what? It could be the thing that keeps you from going out of business to respond after the breach happens.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's wrap up. This is too much for me. It's more than I can handle. I need a silver lining, Bill. Give me something.
Okay. Silver lining is this is extremely easy to buy protection for. Terrible events, terrible things to deal with. But as a veterinarian, you want to get back to work, back to doing what you do, dealing with patients, dealing with animals, running your practice. And so, for $3,000 to $5,000 a year for both of these policies, adding if you don't have them. So it's real simple. You call your current insurance professional. You say, do I have a standalone employment practice liability? Do I have cyber insurance? No. Quote it for me and tell me what it's going to cost to buy, and buy a standalone cyber and standalone EPLI policy for your practice. For most practices we work with, we're talking about $5,000 max for both policies.
I will help someone find $5,000 if they need to. We can figure it out.
It was, we chatted about before we hopped on here. Like, if you're really that concerned about money at your practice, worry about cost of goods, not how much you're spending on your EPLI and cyber insurance, because when this claim happens, you're going to really have a problem. So it's an easy fix. It's just not talked about a lot in the industry. I think it's talked about by insurance professionals, but not really pushed as hard as it could be. So, because we run into the, I don't want to sell insurance and be pushy and everything else. we push on the coverage, not the cost. Like, hey, this is really important for your practice. And then, we circle back with our new practice owners and say, hey, 6 months down the road, you're open, you're making some money. Do you want to buy this policy that you turned down? And most of them say, yeah, we do want to buy that. We're just not quite ready yet. So it's easy to fix. You just call your insurance professional, AVMA, guy down the street, your brother-in-law, State Farm, whoever you're buying your insurance from, and say, I need EPLI, I need standalone cyber, I need to protect my practice from these kind of like out of left field claims that aren't the work comp cat bites that we all see, 3 times a month. It's not what's in our face, but they're the bad ones that happen 1 every 10 years that you go, oh man, we dodged a bullet because we had coverage, or holy crap, we just paid out of pocket $100,000.
Okay, I hope these are life lessons for everybody. If people want to ask you questions or buy insurance from you, how do they find you?
Easy to find, butlervetinsurance.com. We have information on our website. You can, all the contact information is there, but bill at butlervetinsurance.com. Otherwise, we're out and about in the vet world, so you can find us a lot of places. Or when you're looking for a great CPA, you can reach out to Granite Peak, and they kick some business.
I just
our
say
way.
ask Bill.
So
I don't know, ask Bill.
yeah, I just asked Bill about insurance, and when CPA comes, I say Granite Peak. But yeah, we're easy to hold. Butlervetinsurance.com.
Okay, well, I appreciate this. Was a little grim. This is a little dark. Hopefully, it's hitting the right people so that we don't have to suffer through. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome, Megan. Thanks for having me on.